This is the Fifth Estate Winning Headlines, your media police post. In this segment, we summarize some of the headlines that you may have missed this morning, but we also take a look at the political pieces that we call cartoons in this country. Today is the 11th of May 2021 and I am 2J.
I'm Tuam.
And I am JM. In case you missed the headlines this morning, here they are. In the Daily Nation, the best of the best. In the Standard, Kapsabet boys, Kabarak take top honors in the Rift. And in the Star, underdogs upset giants in 2020 KCSE. So a big day for KCSE candidates.
Yeah.
We see that big schools had been, defeated by underdogs.
Yeah.
To a certain extent.
Yes.
Today is also a big day for BBI.
Yeah.
The Senate, 52 senators supported BBI, voted in favor of it against 12 who supported no and 1 abstention.
Yeah.
And finally, today, Isaac Maura, senator, nominated, was ejected
Yes.
from the party and his seat is now officially vacant.
Big day for the Jubilee administration.
Yes. 2J, do you want to tell us something about the C's and the D's?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, one of Prof's favorite quotes is, and I think this is encouragement to those students who feel that they may not have done as well as they wanted to or could have.
Yeah.
Eventually, all those A students that scored those crazy high marks are going to be working for you. The quote goes along the lines of, one day all the A's will be working for the B's who actually, working for the C's.
Yeah.
So don't worry, hold on tight. Everything will be fine.
I love it.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Tuam, why don't you tell us what you want to talk about today?
Excellent. And I'd like to imagine that William RUTO has a political war room. And in that war room, RUTO's general has 5 war fronts drawn out on the war table. All war fronts are calculated to make William RUTO president. The first war front is BBI. The second war front is the Supreme Court. The third war front is IBC. The fourth war front is ICC. And the fifth war front is the Watus, the masses. Now, imagine RUTO asking his chief general, how are we doing? What kind of answer do you think his general would give? In our view, RUTO has probably fired his chief general by now. And if he hasn't, then his general's incompetence will lose RUTO the war even before the war has begun. The truth is this, William RUTO should look around him. He is surrounded. The masses and all the bottom-up nonsense won't save him. And that's because he doesn't have all the war fronts necessary in making him president.
Yeah.
I mean, picture this. If Uhuru Kenyatta and Raila Odinga can marshal 235 members of parliament and 52 members of parliament
Of
Senate, what does that mean for RUTO? It means RUTO can be impeached. If Martha Koome is Kenya's next Chief Justice, what does that mean for RUTO? Go figure. If Fatu Bensouda has evidence that RUTO tampered with witnesses,
Yes.
what does that mean for RUTO? Google Jean-Pierre Bemba. If IBC will have a new set of commissioners by June, what does that mean? We will kiss Maraga on the forehead and tell him, gracias un el presidente del tribunal.
What does that mean in English?
Thank you so much, Chief Justice.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, the truth is RUTO did not think this through. He clearly underestimated his boss.
Yeah.
Maybe he should cut his losses now and surrender. And that's because, as Joseph Stalin taught us, if the opposition disarms, well and good. If they refuse to disarm, we shall disarm them ourselves.
Oh, wow. All right. So you're just saying that all the dominoes are falling one by one.
One
by
after
one.
the other, and he's not seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not seeing it.
So maybe I'll just add on to what I said yesterday.
Yes.
When I argued that the 2022 elections cannot be about choosing a class problem without dealing with our tribal issues as a country. We would simply be swapping out one devil for another.
Yeah.
And today I want to advance that thought by talking about populism, and more specifically, the problem with populism. I believe GK touched on this a few weeks ago. And I want to start by making a few statements. Firstly, populism argues that the elites are corrupt and the people need better representation.
Yes.
But it actually makes very few policy commitments after that.
Yeah.
It justifies complaints, but it can't produce any solutions.
That's right.
But the main good that is populism is that it reveals issues that large parts of the population care about. I'll give it that much. But that the political elites avoid discussing, such as minimum wages, ease of doing business, and police harassment, and of course more. So it speaks to those who feel left behind. Tick. However, the main bad is that populism is a one-track ideology, which refuses to admit that other interests and opinions exist. It focuses on dividing people as opposed to building bridges. See what I did there? Populism has often been described as a thin ideology because it has a weak policy platform, aka it has no substance. Instead, when a populist leader speaks, it is often harsh and divisive.
That's right.
And this is where anger comes in. In order to connect with the people, there has to be an enemy to generate resentment. And this is very dangerous. So now I want to bring these thoughts home. Because in my view, William Ruto, UDA, Wheelbarrownomics, and Tanga Tanga stand for empty, divisive, populist ideals. And if we allow this to happen, we're putting our democracy and our country at risk.
That's right.
Hustlers versus dynasties is basically the people versus the elite, but with a new name. The thin ideology criticism lies in a failure to actually formulate plans or promises that will change people's lives. Where is Ruto's policy strategy or manifesto that will take Kenya further? I'm waiting. Giving voice to the people's problems is one thing, but providing actual solutions is a completely different one. And populism tends to get ugly when it finally gets into power. If Ruto has to share power with a non-hustler, what's going to happen? And just to be clear, in case I sound alarmist, we have more than enough evidence from Europe, the US, and Latin America of how populism can tear a country apart. Look at Italy, Trump, Venezuela, Greece, Brexit, just to name a few. All of these countries were promised the equivalent of wheelbarrows and prosperity and got nothing. Nikita Khrushchev once said that if you preach revolution today, tomorrow, and the next day, and there are no results, on the fourth day, the masses will say to hell with you. The country needs to wake up and see that they are being offered nothing in exchange for making one man president. And in my view, it's not worth it. Not at all.
Very, very well put. Now, today, I would like to reflect on the fall of William Ruto as well. How will his coup de grace be executed? It's quite simple. Invoke the law. The idea here will be to borrow from Vladimir Putin's playbook. To my friends, everything. To my enemies, the law. Exactly. So the law has always been an effective political weapon.
Absolutely.
As party leader of Jubilee and head of state, the president has the power to convene the much dreaded Commission of Inquiry. Yes, this public show trial of the deputy president may create sympathy for him amongst his core base of supporters. But you know what? It will seal his fate. The best strategy, as we say here at the Fort Hall School of Government, is always the obvious strategy. So the RUTO inquiry will build a background of acceptance for his impeachment. The brief of this commission will be to investigate the many allegations made against William Ruto. Like Lee Mudoga, the Nyeri lawyer and longtime enemy of Charles Njonjo, who led Njonjo's prosecution in 1983. Ruto's prosecution will be led by a lawyer from the Kalenjin community with an axe to grind. The RUTO Commission will investigate in public every aspect of Ruto's life and misdeeds. He will be implicated for, amongst other crimes and misdemeanors, avarice, land grabbing, misuse of funds, harassment of junior procurement officers, crimes against humanity, and so on and so forth. Even those Harambe contributions in churches he's been making will be audited retrospectively. In parallel with the inquiry, the purge of William Ruto's supporters will also take place to take out the network of allies and supporters he has in government. Those supporting and financing William Ruto will be revisited by Sunny. Sunny?
The green arm of the law.
The green arm of the law. Their buildings will be demolished. Loans from financial institutions, they'll be recalled. Arrests will be made for unpaid taxes. And even if and when they pay, we will still jail them.
Okay.
A show trial, guys, is in the offing. These last 15 months, we're going to see a bloodbath.
And it's about time, maybe.
Politically.
Yes.
Politically. So we have a 3-part criteria that we use to assess the headlines: topical or speculative, repetitive or groundbreaking, and thoughtful or just plain lazy. I particularly like the one of the star. Underdogs upset giants in 2020 KCSE. But I don't know what you guys think.
I mean, I quite like all 3 headlines. And I think quite important to remember is that one of the Jubilee campaign promises was that there was going to be an increase in the quality of education in Kenya. And I feel like the proof is in the pudding, because in the midst of a global pandemic, both KCSE and KCPE managed to have, I think, the highest grades in the longest time. So I would give it to all 3 headlines.
I think schools seem to be improving.
All 3.
Yeah.
All across the board. I agree. So all 3, we have winning headlines there. And now, on to our final thought. But before we get there, please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that like button as well. So what is our final thought?
And now our final thought, it is inspired by a book entitled Think Like a Freak. And it is written by Stephen J. Dubner and Stephen David.
You forgot the rest of the head of the title.
Please remind us.
It's about the authors teaching you how to retrain your brain.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, and of course this comes from the authors of, I think, 2 of our favorite books, Freakonomics and Super Freakonomics, written by a journalist and economist. So Levitt and Dubner offer a blueprint for an entirely new way to solve problems, whether your interests lie in minor life hacks or major global reforms. As always, with them, no topic is off limits. They range from business to philanthropy, sports to politics, all with the goal of retraining your brain.
Oh, yes.
Along the way, you'll learn the secrets of a Japanese hot dog eating champion, the reason an Australian doctor swallowed some dangerous bacteria, and why Nigerian email scammers make a point of saying that they're from Nigeria.
I love it, yes.
So the authors
I love it.
take us inside their thought process and teach us all about how to think a bit more productively, more creatively, and more rationally.
Yes.
So the question is, what does it mean to think like a freak?
Yes.
And in many ways, thinking like a freak encourages you to question everything, including the things you already know to be true. So we have lots of research studies that have demonstrated that conventional wisdom is often wrong. And it's just because people state something emphatically or believe it to be true, it doesn't actually make it true. Similarly, just because 2 events are related because of time does not mean that one event or behavior caused the other event or behavior. Another one of our favorite quotes: correlation does not equal causality.
Yes,
that's right.
So thinking like a freak involves approaching problems and issues from different angles, with different expectations and without preconceptions and predetermined limitations. So to do so, we need to rely on data to understand how the world works, learn how incentives impact behavior, understand how resources are allocated, and explore obstacles through these resources. Now, if it sounds easy, it actually isn't. And the question is, why do so few people manage to think like a freak? And so I think the simple answer is that humans have many limitations. Our biases influence our thoughts and behaviors, so we seek out evidence that confirms what we already think is true and discounts information that doesn't. So in chapter 2, for example, the authors talk about the 3 hardest words in the English language for people to say. And those words are, I don't know. If a person knows everything, then there's nothing new that you can learn. And whether you're afraid of being ridiculed or genuinely believe that lying is the key to success, adults would rather come up with a wrong answer than admit their ignorance.
That's true.
So one story was about wine tasting. And you have this food and wine critic who carries out 17 blind tastings across the US. And his investigation involved 500 people who were wine novices or wine professional sommeliers. And they tasted bottles of wines that ranged from $1.65 to $150. And he found that on average, all of the people preferred the cheap, bad wine to the expensive, supposedly good wine. And after the experiment was carried out, it was concluded that people were influenced by what other people thought was a good wine, and no one wanted to admit that they didn't know something. So I think that was a very interesting one, especially for, I think, Kenyans who like to floss and pretend that they know a lot of stuff when they know very little. Right?
Especially the current guys.
Adults in particular have significant barriers compared to children, and it's one of the things that they mention in this book.
True.
Significant limitations because of all those biases you've talked about. Now, I'll talk a little bit also about the Japanese hot dog eating champion.
Please.
So every day we encounter problems, small problems, big problems, and other conundrums.
Yes.
When doing problem solving, the authors advise us to look past the pedestrian level conversations.
Yes.
And they ask us to think critically and redefine problems, look at them from different perspectives.
Yeah.
So the authors give an example of mainstream media. The Fourth Estate are known, for example, to focus on a single aspect of a story.
Oh, true.
For instance, on the issue of Kenya's rising public debt. Rather than considering a host of other relevant factors, such as what the debt is being used for and how it's contributing to economic development and how much confidence we have from the international community, they would rather just, give a one-sided view of the story, give an incomplete perspective of things. So, what should we do to get around this syndrome of pedestrian thinking? First, we ought to avoid the urgency instinct, the tendency to make rash decisions that often end up being completely misguided.
Correct.
The second thing they say, we ought to take in multiple perspectives in order to avoid misconceptions. Here at the Fort Hall School of Government, we call this ground truthing. The whole idea is to trust but verify. What you've seen on the Fourth Estate, go and verify it by reading some other pieces.
Verified gossip.
Yes, that's right. Third, drill down to the root cause of the problem. And here the authors give an example of the American education crisis, where the discussion is typically focused on the faults in the schooling system and on issues such as how qualified the teachers are and the sizes of the classes and so on. Now, obviously, making improvements in those areas would help to improve children's performance in schools. But in fact, what they found after an experiment is that when you interrogate empirical evidence, you find that factors such as the skills of teachers have actually much less influence on a school children's performance than parenting does. The best approach, therefore, they found, would be to focus attention on the problem. Why do American children usually know less than those from many other countries? And by focusing on that original problem, they were better able to identify other aspects of the situation and to arrive at more effective solutions. Now, fourth and finally, in addition to looking beyond the public discourse to pedestrian thinking, it can sometimes help to redefine the problem. And here the authors give an example of this hot dog eating guy, a guy called Kobe, a slim Japanese student who, when he first entered the world's biggest hot dog eating competition, none of his competitors ever saw him as a threat. But Kobe didn't just win the contest. He doubled the previous record and consumed 50 hot dogs in one sitting.
Oh, wow.
How, you may ask? He redefined the problem. From how can I eat more to, he asked himself, how do I make hot dogs easier to eat?
Oh my gosh. And
this led Kobe to invent new techniques such as soaking the buns in water and eating them separately from the sausages, which he had put on the side. And that turned out to be the key to success. Redefine the problem.
That's very smart.
I had this imagery of someone in Karen just dipping hot dogs in water. I don't know why it had to be Karen, but the chapter I love was the upside of quitting. And I want to dedicate this chapter to William RUTO.
Of course you do.
And why he should quit. In our most honest moments, it's easy to see that things aren't working out. And the question normally is, why haven't I quit? Now, there are three forces that make us not quit. The first is a lifetime of being told by people like Winston Churchill that quitting is a sign of failure. Now, the second is the notion of sunk costs. This is pretty much what it sounds like. The time or money or sweat or equity you have already spent on a project. It is tempting to believe that once you are invested heavily in something, it is counterproductive to quit.
So true.
This is known as a sunk cost fallacy, or as a biologist Richard Dawkins called it, the Concorde fallacy, after the supersonic plane.
Yeah.
Its two patrons, the British and the French governments, suspected Concorde was not economically viable, but had spent too many billions to stop. The third force that keeps people from quitting is a tendency to focus on concrete costs that pay too little attention to opportunity cost. This is the notion that for every dollar or hour or brain cell you spend on one thing,
Yes.
you surrender the opportunity to spend it elsewhere. For example, if you want to go back to school to get an MBA, you know it will cost you like 2 years and about 2 million shillings, for example. But what might you have done with that time and money had you not been in school? It's the same thing for William RUTO. If he has spent 8 years as deputy president and all the resources just to be president in 2022, he should cut his losses if he feels his position doesn't exist. If he feels it will not exist by 2022. If he has accumulated 10 billion shilling financial war chest for the 2022 election and he doesn't see himself becoming president in 2022, he can start a fund for hustlers and call it a bottom-up fund.
Exactly.
Now, William RUTO, why haven't you quit by now?
Right? And I feel like it would completely justify and legitimize his bottom-up economics if he did just that.
Absolutely.
Give the money away.
If he's very serious about it.
Yeah, if he's genuine about it. Now, today we had winning headlines from all three dailies. Congratulations again to the A's, the B's, the C's, the D's, the E's, even the U's.
Yes.
Your day, to shine will
Exactly.
come. Once upon a time it will come. Now, I'd like to finish with a quote. And this is a quote in light of everything that's happened today. BBI passing unanimously in the Senate, Isaac Mora being expelled and his seat being vacated. And it's a quote by an American who used to work at the White House, and he said, "If you've got them by the balls, their hearts and minds will follow."
Wow.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also on your TV screens. Find us on Pan Free to Air, Go TV, and StarTimes. Have a good evening.